All right, episode 89 is here of the Press Box Podcast. And this episode, we're going to talk fantasy football. It's our 2021 NFL fantasy preview episode. We're going to talk about all the positions as well as some draft strategy. I know a lot of drafts are coming up here with the season starting soon. And we're also going to talk a little bit about specific players, some that might be overrated, some that might be underrated that you should keep your eye on. And we'll get into a little bit of everything on this episode, as well as what we've done with our own fantasy teams and what you guys might be looking to do with yours out there. Before we get started, though, as always, follow us on Twitter at PressBoxPod. Check us out on YouTube as well. Our producer, Nathan, putting up a lot of great content on YouTube. Check us out there. Search PressBox Podcast on YouTube. And rate and subscribe on iTunes as well. I know we have a lot of new listeners out there. Help get the word out. Rate, subscribe, leave a review. And, we look forward to all the feedback. Without further ado, 2021 Fantasy Preview episode starts now, right here on the PressBox Podcast.
Okay, welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. Hi, I'm your co-host, Ralph Miranda. I'll be joined by my other co-host, Joseph Miranda, and our producer, Nathan Miranda, shortly. This is episode 89 of the Press Box Podcast, and today we are going to do our annual fantasy football preview show to talk about the upcoming fantasy football season. We did our NFL preview last week, and I'm joined now by Joseph and Nathan. And guys, we've both had our fantasy drafts, and let's start with Joseph. Joseph, give us your impressions of not only the draft this year, but kind of the overall pool of talent and where they're slotted based on position.
I mentioned this last year, but in our league last year, I had the last pick in the draft, which is a ticket to a bad season automatically. So this year I had the fourth pick.
Right, fourth pick.
Ended up getting Derrick Henry. So, I think this year, as far as the pool of top talent goes, you're looking at, if you have a top 6 pick, you're guaranteed to probably get one of those top running backs.
Right.
I don't have the list in front of me, but McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Barkley,
right,
Henry, and then
right.
Kamara and
right.
Ezekiel Elliott maybe slides in there.
Right.
And then after that, it's kind of like, okay, what route do you want to go? And you guys took Kelsey, right?
Right, we did.
So you took the top tight end, who, if you look at these ESPN fantasy projections, which I don't really know how they come up with these, for their projected points this year, Kelsey's projected to get just as much, if not more, than a lot of the top running backs. So
right.
And it's a point per reception league. So he's going to get all the receiving points more than the running backs, obviously. So I think it's kind of a toss up, whether you want to just, depending on what pick you have, whether you want to go receivers or running backs. But again, I really only felt like really good about maybe 3 or 4 players.
Right.
And I think Henry's one of them if he can just keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah, Nathan and I shared a team again this year as we did last year. And I'll let you talk with Nathan about, last year, I think we had the 8th pick, if I'm not mistaken. And we took Kelsey because really there was no other running back available at that time. Yeah. This year we had the 3rd pick, so we could have gotten one of those running backs, but we had a discussion and decided on Kelsey. So talk a little bit about that to kind of leverage off what Joseph was saying.
Well, yeah, last year we did that, but it was a little more out of necessity because there weren't really the top running backs.
Right.
But I think we discovered as the season went on that was a good strategy regardless of where you pick, really.
Right.
And I think we decided that really, well, at the end of last year, I thought, okay, if you can't get maybe the top 2 or 3 running backs.
Right.
Like Joseph just named about a handful, they're like maybe 5, but I would only consider really Derrick Henry and probably McCaffrey as the only 2 that I would take above someone like Kelsey.
Right.
And we had the 3rd pick.
Right.
So the more we talked about, really, I think even if you can take one of those 2 running backs, I think Kelsey may be the better pick.
Right.
Especially if it's a point per reception league.
Right.
And these running backs, especially McCaffrey, they take a lot of beating. and you just never know what you're going to get with the running back as far as staying healthy for all 17 games. Right? Whereas a receiver, they don't have as much toll and hits on their body. It's point per reception is a big thing.
Right.
So really, I think we would have taken Kelce if we had the number 1 pick, wouldn't we? I mean,
I think we would have.
Because I don't think anybody picking ahead of us changed our idea of what to take.
No, they didn't. No.
And then typically my thinking is I'm saying that I really do not value running backs after the first 2 or 3 running backs.
Right.
In this draft, I would say after probably Derrick Henry, McCaffrey, and maybe Cook.
Right.
Maybe Barkley. After those guys, I don't really value running backs.
Right. Well, go ahead. No,
what I was going to say, so I think take a top tight end like Kelce first, especially if you have a point per reception league like we do, and then start looking at top receivers.
Right.
But as someone in our fantasy league brought up to us during our draft, they thought that after we took Kelce, they thought that we took receiver with our second pick, I believe.
We took
we took a quarterback. That's
quarterback.
Right. But someone brought up to us that they thought we were going to go with 2 top tight ends instead of a receiver.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? I never thought of that, but that's really a great idea because
put one in the flex.
Right. If you take Kelce, let's say with your first pick,
right,
and then let's say you have an opportunity to take a pretty good receiver, like top 5 receivers. At that point, you're probably going to still be able to get someone like Kittle or Darren Walker at tight end.
Right.
I think those guys are better than most receivers.
Yeah.
Because they get more receptions probably, and these guys nowadays, a tight end is not like what you think of like a tight end. It's like they line up in the slot.
Right.
They do all types of stuff with them. They're really like a receiver.
Right.
And top receivers are going to go quicker than top tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll be able to get 2 top tight ends. You're not going to be able to get 2 top receivers.
No.
So I think that's a great strategy too when we're looking at your second and third pick.
Yeah, and we decide. Go ahead, Joseph. I'm sorry.
No, you can finish that, and I wanted to talk about the running back.
Yeah, I was going to go right to you after this point. Was that we decided to go quarterback with our second pick, but that's a little deceiving. We wanted to go dual threat quarterback, and that's because we realized that a guy that can throw it and run it is more valuable. And quarterbacks have kind of fallen out of grace over the last few years. And Joseph, I'll go to you. Your theory, I thought, was really good about why you don't want to take a quarterback too early, because you said nowadays, any quarterback's going to throw for 300 yards today, right?
Yeah. In our league, I took Mahomes in my second pick, which, I think he's kind of above other guys.
He is.
Count on him week to week, pretty much put up 20 points. But
and he's a dual threat. He runs.
Yeah, with that offense. But I'm saying in general, any given week, there's going to be a guy that throws, or multiple guys that throw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
Would it surprise you if week 1 if Andy Dalton had 300 yards and 3 touchdowns?
No, not at all.
Very possible. So so could Sam Darnold for the Panthers 1 week, or 2 weeks or whatever. So, I think that unless you can get a Mahomes, or you're really set on getting a dual threat guy like you guys got Murray, and you want to build with, like maybe Nathan said, maybe 2 tight ends or receivers, running backs. I think you can get a serviceable quarterback later in the draft. Even like Roethlisberger, I got him as my backup, but he was available way late in the draft. Well, he could throw for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns this season pretty easily. So and then again, if it's position 2 where every week there's starters on the waiver wire.
Right.
Like there's going to be 3 or 4 starting quarterbacks you can just pick up any week you need them, whereas it's not really the case for back receiver.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I remember you tell us about that strategy, that thought, I think, during last season, which is right on. I think I just think dual threat, I think, puts them in a different tier. We talked about this, that if we couldn't get a dual threat guy, we listed, I think it was Murray, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, maybe. That was about it. If we couldn't get one of those, we definitely weren't taking a quarterback that early.
Right.
Yeah, and then these running backs, like people just take running backs like they just stockpile them like it's like canned food or bread and milk. Like I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't really understand that either. But my next point was, okay, those guys I listed, I'm kind of with you. Not all those guys I would even take. Like, are we sure McCaffrey's the top guy? Like we touched on this a little bit in the NFL preview, but I can see him getting hurt again in week 4, the hamstring, or getting banged up here and there. And I don't think he's the third. ESPN had him way in front. Like he's gonna
he's
as far as the projected points, like he's way up there. But I think if I had the first pick, I'd either take Henry or maybe Dalvin Cook.
Right.
Barkley.
Really, I think Barkley's
Yeah.
a little bit overhyped, but
Yeah, I agree
maybe.
with that.
I don't know.
I agree with that. But I think he's a little overhyped. But Dalvin Cook is good. But something about Dalvin Cook, I don't know. Like,
Well, you got
Maybe
to remember.
Kamara. I would take Kamara.
well,
maybe.
I used to like Kamara a lot, but then I had him. Was it 1 year?
Yeah, he didn't do much.
I think I had him
His second year. His second year.
Maybe he didn't do much, and then I got sour on him. Then,
Well, you got to remember too. I mean, Barkley's coming off an ACL injury, so you really don't know what you're going to get from Barkley this year. So it's hard to, you never know. And McCaffrey's coming off injuries too, not an ACL, but and then you got to have a quarterback that can get them the ball, right? I mean, they can run it, but if they're going to be receiving threats, you got to be able to dump the ball to them.
that's another thing. All these guys are kind of receiving threats, but looking at this year, again, I think Kelsey over anybody. But if you want to take a running back, I would say really only Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because like we talked about, McCaffrey kind of has like a big bag running style, and he's not a big bag.
Right.
Were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say that. Yeah, I might have very well taken Henry with the number 1 pick, and I got him at 4, so I was very pleased with that.
Yeah,
right.
Because the Titans aren't giving anybody else the ball.
No,
and, very rarely. And then 2, he's a guy that now, granted, you have to be within 1 score, have the lead, but you can just feed him late in the game and he'll just wear on guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't want to tackle him. He's just a beast. So
I think he gets a lot of his yards later in the game.
Yes. Well, not only later in the game, also later in the season.
Yeah.
I mean, like late in the season when it's cold and windy. He's great from about week 10 to week 17. He's great for breaking off a couple of 80-yard runs, and that's what makes him so deadly to defenses.
And it doesn't matter how durable a guy is or whatever. Like Joseph, the main thing I think with running backs, he needs carries. All right,
no question.
So now, if for whatever, and you, what?
I was going to say all the guys I listed off there are going to get carries.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, to your point, though, if for whatever reason the Titans had a dual back system, I don't know why they would want to, but let's say that Derrick Henry didn't get a whole lot of carries. They had 2 backs.
Right.
Well, he's a great running back. Let's say he's still the same quality running back. He just splits carries. I would much rather have a guy who's further down that list that doesn't split carries.
Right.
Even though he's not as good of a running back as Derrick Henry.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's the carries, and like you said, even though these other guys don't really split carries, I mean, Barkley's not really splitting carries, but for some reason, Henry, like you said, if anything, some of these other guys, maybe not Barkley, but if anything, some of these other guys, McCaffrey especially, are not going to get as many carries just because they need to give him a little breather now and then, or whatever. But
a perfect example of what you're just talking about is that we took Kelsey and then Kyler Murray. So by the time we could take a running back, we ended up taking Mike Davis from Atlanta. Well, actually, we took him as a second round. We took Myles Gaskin before him, who's rated 22nd according to ESPN, and then we took Mike Davis. But they're both going to get the ball.
Right, and I think we took a receiver before them.
Yeah. So that was around 4th or 5th pick, and they may not be highly rated, but like you said, they're going to get the ball.
Talk about that Mike Davis guy a little bit, because that was somebody that I'll admit I had never heard of Mike Davis before. I've heard of Stephen Davis. So I thought, but the more you talked to me about him, and the more I heard about him after our draft, I think that's a great pick for people.
Well, I was looking at, we needed another running back. So I was searching around for one during the draft when we were waiting for our next pick. And I found Mike Davis. He was in Carolina the last couple of years, and of course didn't get many carries because of McCaffrey. So he signed a free agent contract with Atlanta. Atlanta doesn't really have a running back, so he's going to be their guy. He's going to be probably their top 2 or 3 down guy. So I thought, what the heck? We've got nothing to lose.
Was he the guy that was getting last year when McCaffrey was out?
He did. He got a lot of carries last year because McCaffrey was hurt. But he was a free agent, and he saw the writing on the wall.
And like you said, Atlanta didn't really have a guy. So
no, they didn't. They didn't have a guy at all that could really run them. And they need a running back badly because you got to take some pressure off of Matt Ryan.
Yeah, and I think that was a great pick for anybody out there listening. And then you're big on what's that guy's name? Najee
Harris. Yeah,
I mean he's 12. Everyone knows of him. I think.
Well, I think he's going to be the guy. The Steelers need a running game badly, and he's going to get a lot of carries if he stays healthy. And I think he's going to be a very highly. I predict right now. We'll mark this down for next year's fantasy show. I think, barring injury, Najee Harris will be in the top 3 next year of running backs.
Oh, on the list.
Yeah.
So I was going to say that. I mean, what was I going to say? Oh, the other thing that always comes up in my mind is how early to take a defense. I mean, some people take a defense with the last pick.
Right,
You know,
right.
I think Joseph, you took him pretty early in our
Joseph
draft.
was the
You
first
one.
one. Yeah.
So talk about what went into that. For you.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So first of all, I think in general, like if you want a defense, a certain defense, and like you can go ahead and take them. Not saying like first or second round, but like the stigma that you took a defense too early. Well, not necessarily if you rounded out your roster fairly well, you can take one earlier than people think, right? So I took Tampa Bay just because they've got all their starters coming back.
Right.
They had a good playoff run, so I think they're a better defense at the start of this season than they were at the start of last season, based on what they did last season. And again, I don't know how much to read into these projections, but the ESPN rankings had them probably a good 35, 40 points above the second place defense, right?
Right.
I was like, you know what? Like, I have all my starters at this point, or I think I did. I was like, I'll just go ahead and take the Tampa defense. They're clear cut number one,
Right.
So.
Yeah, and going back to what you said, it always bugs me when people say you took such and such too early. Well, no, I didn't. I mean, if that's when I wanted to take him, I took him right exactly what I wanted to.
Too early for your draft strategy.
For you maybe, or for the status quo, but not for me.
And I will say you're right about that, but you don't take a defense with the first pick. Obviously.
No, obviously
that's kind of ridiculous. And I would recommend that having most if not all your starters rounded out before you take the defense, right? You don't need a second and third like receivers before you start taking defense. But if you have like your two receivers, your running back and your tight end or whatever, then you can go ahead and take a defense.
I agree with that. Make sure you have some guys that you can bank on first in the high profile spots,
right?
Like receiver, running back, tight end. But and then I think we were the next to take a defense, right? We took the Steelers.
We took the Steelers because we had them last year, and they did a really good job last year, and they're going to do another good job this year. But again, picking your best defense is great, but there's going to come at least 1 week when you have to decide: do I pick up another defense just for that 1 week, or do I drop my defense and pick up?
I think if you're gonna make sure to get your defense like we discussed,
you
don't drop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I did is with I think the last pick or second last pick, I drafted a second defense.
Right.
Just to kind of like have either do what you said. So if Tampa's playing well and their bye week comes up, I can just insert the second defense in there without having to drop them, or it just gives me a spot somebody to drop if I want to pick up a waiver wire guy, right?
Right.
It's not, what I mean? I want to be able to drop somebody quickly because there's going to be after week one or even week two guys that either injuries or guys just come out of nowhere and everybody's going to be trying to pick them up.
Right.
That's a good point. Exactly right. You drafted. You have a strategy.
It's like a placeholder, yeah.
You draft somebody just basically to have the ability to drop them, basically.
Right.
Yeah, which is it's interesting because I always feel like there's someone on your roster you can drop.
Sure.
But then again, like Joseph said though, a lot of times that this happens early in this late in the year. You usually know, like I don't need this guy.
Right.
But early in the season, when the people on the waiver wire it's more important to get these guys.
Right.
It
is sometimes tough to say, well, I haven't seen enough of this guy. Do I drop him? Do I not drop him?
That's
right. So I basically want to take
But from the other side, the other side of the coin, though, if you needed to pick up a defense, I think there's always defenses out there 1 week that you can pick up.
Sure.
I mean,
you can play pretty well off matchups there too.
Yeah.
Even if I'm just throwing teams out there, even if the Saints defense is not done well that great this season, well, they may be playing like the Panthers and Sam Darnold. He's been having a terrible season. Whatever. You like that matchup. What I mean? So
that's right. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Just look at who they're playing. If it's playing a horrible team, pick them up.
Right.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
Kickers and defenses are usually kind of, I think, talked about together because they're similar.
Yeah, kickers are even below defense.
I agree with that. Yeah.
If I had to kick, if I had a guy I'm looking at kicking, this is kind of my guy right here. I like to take. I would make sure I got my defense before I got my kicker. If I like the defense.
No question about
that. Definitely. The defense is, they're out there and they're controlling their own destiny, for lack of a better word. Like kickers, like, okay, well, some kicker may have a good week because the offense stalls 5 times and they settle for field goals, right? And then next week they score touchdowns and he gets extra points only. I don't know. So it's kind of a crapshoot. Good.
They're good.
You can say it's kind of a crapshoot, but I do think if you can, maybe try to draft a kicker that plays indoors because the weather takes the weather out of it. So, in this home games, kicking in a dome and may make things easier. I don't know. That's kind of a theory I thought of.
That's a good point. I think you used that theory before. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
But kickers also can't control if they're going to have a 40-yard look, a 50-yard look,
right.
It will get you more points. They don't have any control over
that. Let me switch the analysis real quick here because I want to get your guys' input on this. But we had our draft on August 21st, which was 2 Saturdays ago. What's your take on dates for the draft? I personally think that with the NFL taking a week off this week before the start of the season, I think this weekend would have been a great weekend to draft because we've already had guys injured in the last preseason game or injured in a dual practice or cut already, whatever. So I think what's your opinion on best timing for a draft?
Yeah, I think as late as you can do it as late as you can. But for that reason, I remember us sitting there on the draft. And we were going to take that Travis Etienne guy.
Right.
We were going to take him, I think. It was between him and Mike Davis, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And I was pushing more for the Travis Etienne guy because the system he's with, the college coach and his quarterback. And some guy took him right before us. Well, okay, easy then. We'll take Mike Davis. But then 2 days later, he's out for the season, basically.
Yeah, he hurts his foot against the Cowboys and he's gone.
Right, which you can never help injuries, but you can limit that factor by having your draft right before the season.
Correct. Correct.
Right.
That's right.
Now I understand you have to work out with people's schedules and stuff. But I think you never know, if that's going to work. But if you can, I think have it as late as you can, Joseph.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't really have anything to add to the points you made. They were all great points. And it really back when we first started in fantasy and, your great year of Danny Thompson 06 and all that, you pretty much had to all show up at the draft and announce your picks. But now you have the app, you can everybody can kind of be wherever they are.
Right.
As long as you're in front of your phone at that time, you can do the draft, right?
Correct.
That should be an issue.
I think, right. It's really, unless you really wanted to have a get together, it shouldn't be that much of an issue to do it the week before.
No, I agree with that.
Nowadays too, you can even, I didn't know about this until someone told us at the draft. At least on ESPN, I guess you can do this. You can get a what do they call that?
Queue. You can set up a queue.
You can set up a queue of these are the guys you want to take in this order. Then it will just go down your queue if they're not available to go to the next guy.
Right.
So if you're not going to be available at all, you can make a queue. If you're going to be in and out of being able to make your picks, you can make a few picks, set a queue for the next few picks, make a few picks.
Yeah, you can go. You can toggle back and forth between auto draft with the queue and not. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Joseph makes an excellent point. I think in today's world, there is no reason at all to have to worry about coordinating schedules. You just say, hey, we're having the draft on September 4th, which is today. And if you want to be part of the league, find a way to draft your guys. Yeah, that's right. I think that's it.
Obviously, pick a day at a time. That's not ridiculous. I don't say we're having a draft Tuesday, 1 o'clock.
No, I know that. Yeah. No, I know that.
Right.
So I agree with that, and it obviously affects a lot of situations, not only individual players, but it could affect the defense you take, right? If a key guy gets hurt on that defense, now you've got a hole that maybe makes them not as good a defense.
Yeah, imagine like in Joseph's case, he takes Buccaneers defense, he takes a defense that he can use for other things. Then let's say two guys. This is. You never. This is.
Let's say Levante David gets hurt.
Let's just say one guy, one key guy gets hurt. He's out for the season. Well, Joseph may feel like there's no reason to have the Bucs now, or there's less of a reason. But now he's stuck with two defenses now. It's kind of. I guess you could always drop the Bucs if you need to and keep your other defense. But it creates a lot of headache.
Correct. Yeah,
I agree. You want to go ahead and let's see here. Name some either a sleeper that you have either drafted or you think is kind of going under the radar, or a guy that's very highly rated that you think is overrated and may not have a great season.
Yeah, let's just start with sleepers. So
all right,
okay. I'll go ahead and start since I brought it up. I don't know. I think this guy's still a sleeper, even though he had a good year last year, and I had him last year. It's Cole Beasley.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at receiver, doesn't get a lot of the publicity that the big time receivers get because he's not a number one receiver technically. You got Stephon Diggs, the slot guy, a little small slot guy, but in a points per reception league, he's going to clean up for you because Allen feels comfortable throwing to him over the middle, all that kind of stuff. And he can easily have weeks of 8-9 catches for 70, 80 yards. That's almost 20 points right there. So I got him again this year. I had him last year. He did great. So Cole Beasley, if he's available, he'll be available in the later rounds, I'm sure. So keep an eye out for him.
You go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I think We drafted this
We
guy.
drafted him, yeah.
Yeah, we drafted this guy I'm about to say, so we're both on the same page here. Randall Cobb is a great sleeper. I mean, he's a big name, I think people know, but he's at the end of his career.
Yeah.
He's really low in the receiver list. But Aaron Rodgers, I believe, explicitly asked for him back.
Yes, he did.
And I even saw one report that Rodgers said something like he wasn't going to show up or come back or something unless they got Randall Cobb.
Right.
So they already have they had a great rapport all their whole career, and now he explicitly wants him back in there. It's going to be his third down guy. He's going to be his what do you call it? Blanket
possession receiver.
Yeah. He's going to be anytime he feels in trouble, he's going to be going to Randall Cobb. Right. You don't need Randall Cobb to be doing things that 27-year-olds do. He doesn't need to be like outrunning guys, catching 40 balls, like 10 balls a game. You just need him to get some goal line passes, score some touchdowns, some key,
I think Randall could to kind of sum what you're saying up. I think Randall Cobb is going to be a consistent 5 catches, 65 yards, 1 touchdown type of guy every week.
Security blanket was the term I was looking for.
Yeah.
He's Aaron Rodgers' security blanket. Yeah. He's not going to be he's not going to be. I don't think he's going to have any like over 100-yard multiple touchdowns.
No.
But you don't need that.
No, and that's the same with
Kofi. That's a good thought because he's a guy that's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Like he left Green Bay.
Right.
Went to, I think, Dallas and then Houston.
Right.
So people kind of forgot about him. But yeah, he's back with Rodgers, and I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody else?
No. That was kind of the guy I was looking at. Yeah.
Well, I don't know much. I don't know if I would call this guy a sleeper. I don't really know much about him. So he may have not had some great seasons, but for whatever reason, in my mind, that Raheem Mostert guy in San Francisco, I feel like I always want to try to get him late if I can. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I just feel like one season I think I saw his name a lot doing stuff. And I was like, who is this guy?
Right.
So now he's always on my mind. And like I said, maybe go back and look at his stats. Maybe I'm wrong about his actual production, but Mostert's a guy I always think of. He's still in San Francisco, right?
That's what I was going to ask if he's still in San Francisco. Let's see, where is he at on the list? Raheem
Mostert, San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco. Okay.
For some reason, I just feel like he's kind of a guy that you might want to watch out for.
And then, what was your other question, Joseph? After sleeper, it was
if you've got a guy that's overrated or that you'd stay away from, but still highly ranked.
Does it have to be a guy we've drafted, or just anybody we think?
No, just anybody you can think of.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I'm going to have to go, as much as I hate to say this, I'm going to have to go with Saquon Barkley. And I love the Giants, obviously, but, here's a guy that outside of his rookie year, he didn't get much production 2 years ago. Last year, of course, he tore his ACL. Having watched the Giants' final preseason game, I'm not quite sure that he's going to actually get a lot of production this year because their offensive line is a mess. I don't think there's going to be a lot of lanes for him to run. Now, they may dump a lot of passes off to him, but I think that the defenses are going to be keying on him. And I just think I think he's going to be a great back. I just think he's overrated to be the third highest back listed. That's all.
Right. Yeah. It's a great point. I'm going to go at receiver here with Stephon Diggs. He's what's he on the receiver listing?
He's
3?
Third.
Third. Okay. So, had some good seasons in Minnesota, had a very good season last year. I just don't think that you've got Josh Allen in Buffalo who can be inconsistent still, I think. Right. I mean, last year could have been like a career year between those two, like hooking up, right? So you got that. You got the weather in Buffalo is always iffy.
Right.
You could, especially late in the season. You've got and he's just not like I don't want to say household name because I guess he is at this point. He's not somebody in my mind that you can just bang on to have like a good season after season. So he's a guy that I would stay away from a receiver, especially where he's ranked at. If he drops later in the draft, which I'm not sure he will, you can take him, but I wouldn't spend my top pick on him.
Right.
Yeah. I'll go with, we've touched on him already, so I'll just be quick, but Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's not only is he the top running back, he's the top overall player on ESPN's list. And I just don't know how you can miss a whole season with a pretty significant injury and all of a sudden and be the top player going to the next season.
It's hard.
I mean, at your position, even how you can be the top player having not played last season. So just on the surface, that's ridiculous. And then, like we said, he has a running style. I think it's it's not the Barry Sanders style. He's not like looking, I think, to make a lot of guys miss and not get touched.
Right.
He's kind of like a downhill kind of runner, I feel like. And
Right.
he runs between the tackles just like a typical back would. He has kind of a big back running style. He's not a big back. So I just don't know if he's going to hold up for the whole season. So I don't know how you put him at number one running back, and especially number one overall any player in the league. So I would say stay away from McCaffrey, unless again, if Henry's taken, if Cook's taken, if these guys are taken, and McCaffrey kind of falls to you some, yeah, take it. But
Okay, guys, last question, and I'm gonna give you a chance to practice being on a network TV show. Give me 10 seconds. Your answer, Joseph. Really, your take on drafting rookies?
I think that if you're going to draft a rookie, I would draft a rookie receiver. With the way the league is right now, all the passing, points per reception, I think they can make the quickest impact.
Thank you, Nathan.
yeah, I'd say it depends on the position. I definitely wouldn't draft a rookie quarterback. I think that's pretty obvious. I agree with Joseph taking receivers wholeheartedly. I would also say, or tight ends, it's similar. But I would feel running backs aren't much different than receivers or tight ends. I mean, I feel like there's not a huge learning curve transition from college and failure running the ball. So.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with both of you guys on that. Wish you both best of luck in your fantasy seasons this year. And those of you out there, all our listeners, we wish you luck. I'm sure most of you are in fantasy leagues this year. Make sure you stay in touch with us at Pressbox Pod is our Twitter handle. Remember the Pressbox Podcast YouTube channel to listen to the great clips that Nathan's been putting up there. Let us know. Tweet at us. Give us some comments as to how your fantasy draft went, what you're looking for this year in fantasy football. And it should be a very interesting season this year, especially since we have an extra week of the season since they're playing 17 games this year. So for Joseph, for Nathan, I'm Ralph. Good luck in fantasy. Make sure you check back as we come back with episode 90 next week on the Pressbox Podcast.